What is up, everybody? We're on day 79 of our Bible in a Year series. Just finished Judges yesterday. We're on to Ruth today, and we're actually going to hit the entire book of Ruth in one day. It's only 4 chapters. It's fairly short, but it's an interesting story. So we will jump straight into it. Ruth, chapter 1. During the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Her sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was left without her 2 children and without her husband. She and her daughters-in-law set out to return from their territory to Moab, because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. She left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Naomi said to them, "Each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you, as you have shown kindness to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband." She kissed them and wept loudly. They said to her, "We insist on returning with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "Return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Follow your sister-in-law." So basically, what we're seeing here, Naomi, she moves with her husband and her 2 sons, and her husband dies. Her 2 sons are alive. They get married, and it would have been their responsibilities. We don't know which one was the older, but it would have been their responsibilities to take care of their mother. Now, it's not, to my knowledge, does not fall on the daughter-in-laws to take care of the mother. They actually would be freed from that. They could go back to their home country, or back to their father's house, and possibly remarry and all that. It's not something that they did wrong. It's not a divorce. It's like nothing like that. Their spouse died. Can't control that. And so they would be freed from that. They could go find a new husband and have a family and things like that. But Ruth stays. Ruth stays by Naomi's side. Verse 16. But Ruth replied, "Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me, and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her. The 2 of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local woman exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara," she answered, "for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has oppressed me, and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth, the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So something in this, I'm sure there's people that have done studies on this. Something that I always found interesting, the concept of people's names changing in the Bible, kind of based on circumstances, it seems. So we see it with Abram becoming Abraham. We see here Naomi wants to go by Mara or Mara, and we see with Saul of Tarsus goes to Paul. There's several instances of this happening, and it's usually to indicate some major change that's undergone. Jacob, Israel. So I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing to watch, or a cool thing to see. Ruth 2. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabitess asked Naomi, "Will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone with whom I find favor?" Naomi answered her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So Ruth left and entered the field to gather grain behind the harvesters. She happened to be in the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was from Elimelech's family. Later, when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, he said to the harvesters, "The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you." They replied. Boaz asked his servant, he said to the harvesters, "The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you," they replied. Boaz asked his servant, who was in charge of the harvesters, "Whose young woman is this?" The servant answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab. She asked, 'Will you let me gather fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters?' She came and has been on her feet since early morning, except that she rested a little in the shelter." Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, don't go and gather in another field, and don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. See which field they are harvesting, and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you are thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled." She fell face down, bowed to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor with you so that you notice me, although I am a foreigner?" Boaz answered her, "Everything you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. How you left your father and mother in your native land, and how you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done, and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." So word's gotten back to Boaz. He's heard about everything that she has done, right? Verse 13. "My Lord," she said, "I have found favor with you, for you have comforted and encouraged your servant, although I am not like one of your female servants." At mealtime, Boaz told her, "Come over here and have some bread and dip it in the vinegar sauce." So she sat beside the harvesters, and he offered her roasted grain. She ate and was satisfied and had some left over. When she got up to gather grain, Boaz ordered his young men, "Let her even gather grain among the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Pull out some stalks from the bundles for her and leave them for her to gather. Don't rebuke her." So Ruth gathered grain in the field until evening. She beat out what she had gathered, and it was about 26 quarts of barley. She picked up the grain and went into the town, where her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She brought out what she had left over from her meal and gave it to her. So, practice that we're seeing here, this would be, if you remember previously, they talked about leaving stuff in the field for the poor. But Boaz is not satisfied that he just let her have what's left for the poor. He's actually like going out of his way to make provision for her here. He's making sure that she's being taken care of. He's making sure that she is not being talked down to or made fun of or given a hard time by anyone. So, verse 19. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you gather barley today, and where did you work? May the Lord bless the man who noticed you." Ruth told her mother-in-law, whom she had worked with, and said, "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz." Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May the Lord bless him, because he has not abandoned his kindness to the living or the dead." Naomi continued, "The man is a close relative. He is one of our family redeemers." Ruth the Moabitess said, "He also told me, 'Stay with my young men until they have finished all of my harvest.'" So Naomi said to her daughter-in-law Ruth, "My daughter, it is good for you to work with his female servants, so that nothing will happen to you in another field." Ruth stayed close to Boaz's female servants and gathered grain until the barley and the wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Okay. Chapter 3. Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, shouldn't I find rest for you so that you will be taken care of? Now isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? This evening he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfumed oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but don't let the man know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, notice the place where he's lying. Go in and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do." So Ruth said to her, "I will do everything you say." She went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had charged her to do. After Boaz ate, drank, and was in good spirits, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley, and she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, "Who are you?" "I am Ruth, your servant," she replied. "Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer." So, there's many times where things seem odd or strange to us because it's out of the context that we understand, right? Just picturing like rolling over in your sleep, there's somebody laying at your feet. I don't know if my first reaction would be, "Who are you?" Verse 10. Then he said, "May the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. Now don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say. Since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down until morning." So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark. Then Boaz said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." And he told Ruth, "Bring the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she held it out, he shoveled 6 measures of barley into her shawl, and she went into the town. She went to her mother-in-law, Naomi, who asked her, "What happened, my daughter?" Then Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. She said, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Naomi said, "My daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he resolves this today." So Boaz said that there's somebody else that can do this. But interestingly enough, he still provides for her, right? He still gives her something. Even though at this point it's not his responsibility to. He doesn't have to. This is just genuine kindness on his part. Not even knowing if he's going to marry her, right? Okay. Ruth 4, verse 1. Boaz went to the gate of the town and sat down there. Soon the family redeemer Boaz had spoken about came by. Boaz said, "Come over here and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the town's elders and said, "Sit here," and they sat down. He said to the redeemer, "Naomi, who has returned from the territory of Moab, is selling the portion of the field that belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should inform you. Buy it back in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of my elders of my people. If you want to redeem it, do it. But if you do not want to redeem it, tell me so that I will know, because there isn't anyone other than you to redeem it. And I am next after you. I want to redeem it, he answered. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from Naomi, you will acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the deceased man, to perpetuate the man's name on his property. The Redeemer replied, I can't redeem it myself, or I will ruin my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption, because I can't redeem it. At an earlier period in Israel, a man removed his sandal and gave it to the other party in order to make any matter legally binding concerning the right of redemption or the exchange of property. This was the method of legally binding a transaction in Israel. Side note, I'm happy we've gone away from that practice. That would be kind of weird. Imagine going and buying a car or a house. In order to make it legally binding, you have to get the shoe of the realtor or the car salesman. Okay, verse 8. So the Redeemer removed his sandal and said to Boaz, buy back the property yourself. Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witness to today that I am buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife to perpetuate the deceased man's name on his property, so that his name will not disappear among his relatives or from the gate of his hometown. You are a witness today. All the people who were at the city gate, including the elders, said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is entering your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel. May you be powerful in Ephrathah, and your name well known in Bethlehem. May your house become like the house of Perez, the son of Tamar, bore to Judah, because of the offspring the Lord will give you by this young woman. Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. He slept with her, and the Lord granted conception to her, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, who has not left you without a family redeemer today. May his name become well known in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in old age. Indeed, your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Naomi took the child, placed him on her lap, and became a mother to him. The neighbor woman said, a son has been born to Naomi, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So, sticking this out, he ends up being the ancestor of David, which also puts him as the ancestor of Jesus, which is cool to see how that worked, right? Verse 18. Now these are the family records of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Okay. That is it for day 79, and that is it for the book of Ruth. Short book, easy read. It's rather interesting. There's a lot of things you can kind of dive deep into, but we don't have time on this. Maybe we'll revisit at some point. 3 questions, though. We do have time for 3 questions. Question 1. Ruth's decision to stay with Naomi in chapter 1 is a powerful act of loyalty. What does her example teach us about commitment in tough times? I think we can see that there will be a reward for sticking to things that we have, things that we've promised, at least things that are godly that we have promised, and sticking to them even when things get difficult. I think there is a reward in that. It's not necessarily going to be the same or as big as the reward of what we see here in the story of Ruth, but there is going to be a benefit. Question 2. Boaz's role as Redeemer in chapters 3 and 4 mirrors God for us. How does this story deepen our understanding of redemption in our own lives? So he's going out and um, kind of what's the right word? He is buying this land, right? We see that comes with Ruth, but he's also redeeming that and fixing. I'm trying to think of how to say this. He is fixing what was wronged by her husband originally dying, helping to perpetuate his name and kind of bringing that back. Yeah, I think it's a good parallel there of how this helps, or how it looks in our lives, kind of bringing us back into the fold as children of God and helping us to continue in that, perpetuating our salvation. Question 3. The book ends with Ruth in the lineage of David and ultimately Jesus. How does this remind us that God weaves purpose into even the smallest acts of faith? So if Ruth had just left, like we saw with the other daughter-in-law, she wouldn't have been talked of. She wouldn't have been in the lineage of David, and then ultimately in the lineage of Jesus. So small act of faith, sticking through and sticking to the promises and sticking out in the hard times led to a massive thing for her and for them. So it's awesome. It's good stuff. It's a fun story. It's a short read. You can read an entire book in what do we do, like 18 minutes, I think, maybe. So it's good stuff. And yeah, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're still with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. I always enjoy hearing from people, and I like to respond whenever I can. So always appreciate that. If this has been a blessing to you, don't forget to spread the word. Word of mouth is the best way that podcasts spread. So if this has been a blessing to you, you can spread the word, and it can be a blessing to others as well. Tomorrow, we'll be jumping into continuing on that lineage leading to David, and we're getting into 1 Samuel, and kind of not quite yet the story of David, but introduction to setting up the story of David, and it's good stuff. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, God bless.